Welcome back, everyone, to the cigar smoke-filled back room. I am Doug with Tusk Consulting. TuskConsulting@gmail.com. TuskConsulting@gmail.com. If you're a pro-gun Republican and you need political consulting help, drop me a line at that email address. We'll see what we can do for you. If you are not a pro-gun Republican, go away. So, in the ongoing video series where we talk about things that are not discussed enough in politics, or at least not discussed honestly enough in politics, today we're going to talk about the October surprise. And before we get too far into it, the cigar of the day is a Perdomo Lot 23. Got this the other night at an event. And the bottle of the day is a Weller Special Reserve, or sometimes it's called Weller Green Label. Like 90 proof. Fairly easy sipping. What a lot of people think of when they first get into, good bourbon. Anyhow, not sponsors to the program, but it'd be nice. So, the October surprise. Let's talk about it. What is the October surprise? It is a revelation in the closing month of an election cycle about your opponent, or perhaps about your candidacy, that is damaging. It may or may not be true. We tend to think of October surprises as something that has been dug up. Good detective work, or, whatever, has dug up some juicy morsel, some salacious tidbit about a political candidate, and they've held on to it until that last month of the election because they want to have the maximum impact. And it can have a disproportionate impact, but it's actually not required that it be true. Plenty of times, accusations are made in the closing month that are untrue. And the reason is because, rebutting that and disproving it takes time. It takes, a coordinated media campaign, all of which is difficult to do in the last, 3-4 weeks of an election cycle. So, the October surprise is a kind of negative campaigning. Negative campaigning is a little bit risky. It is risky in that you are giving away a name ID hit. I can't say my opponent, Joe Blow, is a jerk without saying Joe Blow. And if people hadn't heard of the guy before, saying Joe Blow is a jerk is giving away a name ID hit to Joe Blow. So there's risk to that. Typically, negative campaigning is reserved for cases where you have a high name ID rate for the candidate already. You're like, take the people running for president right now. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Everybody knows who they are. Everybody. What negative campaigning does, whether you say Kamala Harris or you say Donald Trump, isn't going to affect their name ID. They have effectively 100% name ID. But if you say, Kamala Harris is a bad person because of whatever, it has the potential to drive up their unfavorables or drive down their favorables, however you want to look at the favorable-unfavorable split, and therefore make them less appealing of a candidate. This is differentiated from positive campaigning. In the positive campaigning, you want people to vote for you. Negative campaigning, you want people to not vote for your opponent. Important, though, not many people say, if candidate A is a jerk, now I'm going to vote for candidate B. That doesn't happen much. Usually it's, if candidate A is a jerk and I was going to vote for candidate A before I found out he was a jerk, now I'm just not going to vote. Or I won't vote for that office. I'll skip it, right? Because I still don't like that B guy very much, right? He's from the wrong party, whatever. Negative campaigning reduces the amount of support that the target of the negative ad is receiving. Having said that, there is more risk. Not just the name ID risk, but there's also the risk of some of that mud splattering back on the candidate or the campaign that's making the accusations. This is where a surrogate, a friendly outside group making the attack can help insulate you from that splatter. There's still going to be some, okay? But it is a way to reduce some of the risk associated with that mud splatter effect. People don't like mud being slung in campaigns. And when mud starts being slung, some people punish both sides by not voting for either one. And that's just something you have to deal with. Your hope is that the other side will be more damaged than you are. And that's why you make the ad. Again, against an opponent that has high name ID. If they don't have high name ID, don't attack them. Attacking an opponent with low name ID is dumb. Dumb. Don't do it. It's stupid. Anyway. As we are talking about the October surprise, this is in the last month of the campaign. And so I'm sure you've heard it lately in the news cycle and the YouTube videos from other analysts. People like to talk about momentum. Going into the election day, of course, now it's early voting, so it's like a month of voting. But going into election day, a lot is made of who has the momentum, right? Who's hot coming in to the last day. One of the nice things about making an attack ad using the October surprise is even if it's just going to give a temporary dip in your opponent's favorables, if it does it at the right time, your opponent will seem to be failing, going down. Their campaign is in disarray. And these are the kind of things that will be said about them the weekend before the election. And that can be powerful. Let's give it an example. There's a lot of potential examples at a lot of levels. But what I think of when I think of the October surprise is in 2000, the presidential race between George W. Bush and Al Gore. If you recall, in October of 2000, it was revealed that George W. Bush had been arrested for DUI in Maine or something. And that one was actually true. This allegation was factual. And it did hurt some. Let's be clear. People don't like voting for somebody that's got a criminal past. DUIs can be very serious, etc. People don't like that. All right. But in some ways, it also kind of humanized W. I was working at a company back then, and a coworker said that while it clearly wasn't a good thing for W, he felt like he could relate to him after that story came out. And was very confused. I was, well, what do you mean? How does this make him relatable? He's like, dude, the guy is governor of Texas, big old state. He owns a baseball team, or did own a baseball team. His daddy was president, right? Like, he's like, there's a whole bunch of things about this guy that I cannot relate to. But this guy was once young and partied too hard and made dumb mistakes and got slapped for it. He's like, yeah, I can relate to that. He's like, yeah, okay. Again, not a good thing, but kind of humanized him in some way, which I thought was an interesting perspective that I wouldn't have thought of on my own. So, if you are the recipient of an attack ad, an October surprise, how do you deal with it? Understanding you have a limited amount of time, a finite amount of time in which to deal with it. Usually at this point, the media buys have all been made, etc. Sure, we live in this digital age. Anybody can, go pop on a YouTube video. But you have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of resources in order to respond. How do you deal with it? Well, there's a number of ways you can deal with this. The first way is prevention. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And when I say prevention, well, it's more preventing the factual, the true October surprise, not the baseless allegation October surprise, which does happen. If candidates are well vetted, they go through a primary process and their history is dug through and people look for, hey, how many times have you been arrested? Hey, do you have a valid driver's license? Hey, are you cheating on your mistress? Yeah. And for the record, everything I just said there are things that have actually happened to candidates, okay? Like I'm not joking here. All those things have actually happened. if you properly vet your candidates, then you don't have to worry about a factually correct attack coming out in the last month of the campaign because there isn't anything. Or what is there, because everybody's got skeletons in their closet, is something that's minor enough that you can deal with it and you can have something, prepared, whatever. So prevention is number one. Get good candidates. Recruit good candidates. Vet them thoroughly, okay? 2, you can ignore it. You say, look, I'm not going to dignify that with a response. I'm going to be above the fray. I'm not going to enter into this, terrible mudslinging that my opponent's doing. That can be effective. 3, you could deny it. This is risky if the accusation is true. If the accusation is false, it's actually a really good idea to deny it. Deny it vigorously, firmly, quickly, loudly. But if it's true, some politicians will still deny it if they think it can't be proven, right? This is getting harder and harder because, these cell phones, everybody's got a camera, everybody records everything. But, if the accusation's from 30 years ago, when not everybody was carrying around a cell phone, it's possible that there's no proof of it. In W's case, that allegation was that arrest, I should say, was 25 years or so in the past, 24 years in the past, but there was a record of it, right? So it was provable. So denying it would have been dumb because they could have just, here's the arrest record, right? Got it right there. There's the officer's signature, boom, yep. So denying it is risky unless it's definitely false. And even if it's true, it's still a potential way to deal with it if you believe it cannot be proven. Another way to deal with it is to just embrace it. And this is what W did. He said, yep, I partied too hard. I had too much. Shouldn't have been out there doing it. I was in the wrong. I learned my lesson. He didn't brag about it. He didn't say he was proud of it. But he said he owned it, right? He owned up to it. My bad. I'm at fault. Totally that was on me. Back then I was, doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And yeah, I did that. And I wish I hadn't, but I did. And, I took my medicine. And so this helps with that whole humanizing aspect. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody. You do. I do. We all do. All of our candidates do. The trick is, when you do something dumb, what you're going to do you learn anything from it? Or do you just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again? W took it as an opportunity to say, hey, I learned from my mistakes, right? I was having a great time partying. I was living way too wild. And I got smacked around by the law, and I learned my lesson. And that's, kind of what's supposed to happen, right? You get negative consequences for your actions. You go, I didn't enjoy that. Maybe I should, do some reflection here, look inside and see what's going on and maybe change my life a little bit. And, that can be a humanizing thing. So he owned it. That was a positive. Responsibility. We like responsibility. Then the last thing you could do, you could counterattack. You can say, oh yeah? Well, the guy who said that about me, had you heard about this and this and this and this, right? Sling a whole bunch of mud back at the other guy. Now, this is especially effective if what they're saying about you ain't true in the first place. You can combine these things. You can deny and counterattack, right? Like, nothing he said is true, but while we're on the subject, let me tell you how awful my opponent is, right? But what if what they're saying about you is true? You can still counterattack. And here's the thing about counterattacks. Even if your counterattacks are based on, now maybe you have counterattack stuff that's factual. Great, right? It just turns into a big mud bath, and everybody gets turned off by it. Hey, that happens a lot in American politics, doesn't it? Yeah. But the fact is, even if your counter-accusations are untrue, that can actually play in your favor. Because if they've attacked you with something true, and you counterattack with something untrue, guess what happens? And they say, well, wait a second, what you said about Joe Blow, that wasn't true. Now in the mind of the public, they start to think that all these allegations that are flying in the last couple weeks, that it's all a bunch of malarkey, even if what they said about you was true. Now, is that nice? Nope. Is that the moral thing to do? Certainly not. Is that the way we would like our politics, our civil discourse to occur? No, absolutely not. But this is exactly what happens today in campaigns. If you think it doesn't, you're a fool. Okay? So, in summary, the October surprise is a tool to lower an opponent's favorables. And it is done in a compressed time frame in such a way that they have difficulty responding to it, and hopefully the negative impact occurs at an opportune time going into election day where the momentum has your opponent going on the downside. And that is what an October surprise is all about. Again, I am Doug with Tusk Consulting. TuskConsulting@gmail.com, TuskConsulting@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. See you in the next one.